Like, he was doing things that were just badass.
That was one of the coolest moments of my life.
I was really scared, but knowing that Dan had the gun, I did have the rifle, like, we would be okay.
All right, guys, welcome to today's show. And on the show with me today, I've got Josh Farr from Droptine Custom Skull Dipping. He and I have been chatting for just a little bit here, but he's got some really cool work out there. He'll share the link for his TikTok, Instagram, all that afterwards, so you can check out the work that he does if you're interested in having some of it done. But we're going to chat a lot about skull dipping, hydro dipping, cerakoting, all sorts of good things. So Josh, thanks for being on the show with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dan.
So you're up in Pennsylvania. I actually just spoke with a guest last night that was from Pennsylvania as well. It sounds like Pennsylvania just has an awesome hunting heritage all the way around.
It does, and it's like a lot of different looks here in Pennsylvania. There's a lot of different mountain like ranges and stuff that you can hunt, field. It's just a lot of opportunities here just locally that I think Pennsylvania is starting to become one of those bigger states that you talk about that producing some of these bigger whitetails and stuff.
I love when a state has like so much variety in it. You know, you can go from ag fields, like big cornfields, bean fields, whatever, and then you get like deep woods. Because I understand, or if I understand correctly, northern Pennsylvania has like deep, dark timber that it's a whole different ball game pursuing whitetail.
You're absolutely right. I'm in like central PA, and we have farmland and we have a lot of like wooded and like a lot of private land and stuff too. But then if you go like hour north of me up towards New York, I mean, it's very remote. It's very big woods kind of thing. And I mean, sometimes the deer that they pull out of those areas is just unreal. You hear these 6 and 7 year old buck and stuff, and it's crazy, but you can go for miles and not see people up there. It's nice.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm always torn. Part of me like just loves having quick access if I want to get out and do a quick morning hunt, sit in my bow stand or something like that. But there's something about like getting away on a trip and being like, man, I'm going up to deer camp, or, you know, wherever that would be for people.
Right. And that's how a lot of it is here. Like we have some private land, like a few minutes up the road from me. So like I get out after work, it's convenient. I can get in my stand quick, but then a lot of people have cabins up north and stuff too. So, and it, you know, it just becomes part of that tradition where you go up, you know, this day of the year, or coyote hunting and things too. And it just becomes fun, really. I mean, get a group of guys out and just enjoy the outdoors.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's kind of every hunter's dream, is to have like a deer camp, like a remote deer camp, even if it's like 20 acres. You just get up, you plan a weekend. Like every year, the weekend before Thanksgiving, we go up and we get out in the woods and we hang out the night before, talk about years past. You know, there's
Absolutely.
Something cool about setting tradition like that. How did you get into hunting? Did you grow up hunting? Did your family hunt?
I did. So like my grandfather really got me into hunting and fishing when I was young. He was a big outdoorsman. I mean, he would hunt everything. He'd fish. I mean, a few hundred days out of the year, he was out in the wild, which was nice. And he always exposed me to it. So I was very much into the sports and then the hunting, the fishing. So like really my whole life, like from I was a youngster, I was shooting guns, and it was just kind of one of those things that I was brought up with. And like we, like my parents and stuff, we would eat a lot of like the venison and stuff when I grew up. Like we didn't always have a lot of means for everything else. So, I mean, it just became a staple, like part of our life. Like, what are we having tonight? We're having venison, or we're having things of that nature. So it was definitely ingrained in my culture and my upbringing. And like I hit those teenager years. I mean, and it really took off, and I really enjoyed it. It's just, it's peaceful. I mean, it's fun. It's competitive. I think, you know, there's different levels of competing against yourself and things too, but it's always like a new idea or scene, and you kind of need that excitement. Like I watch a lot of deer and things on camera, but where I'm at, I can go out one day and I'm watching all these deer, and like the next day I might have a monster just come in from nowhere that's completely off my radar. So I mean, it's constantly changing and evolving. It's just a lot of fun. So I mean, my grandfather definitely got me into it. My dad and I, we hunt too. He's more of the traditional whitetail hunter. But we go out turkey hunting. I mean, coyote hunting here in the winter, or even the summertime. That becomes a fun thing. You go out around midnight, and we have you can take your AR guns out now here in PA. So
Nice.
we have lights and stuff on them. It's just different kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And recently, we've been really getting into turkey hunting, which is kind of, we would turkey hunt and stuff here the past few years, but I don't know. A few friends and I have been doing this new technique. We call it the run and gun. Where we would hear, we'll kind of sound off in the morning where the turkeys are at. You can get an idea where they're at. We'll hunt public lands. And then we'll just kind of like take off after where we think they're at, kind of set up on them, call and bring them in. It's fun. It kind of gets your adrenaline going because you're running a lot in the woods, and it's a different kind of hunting, but it's kind of like hit or miss too. So then a lot of times, like, we'll set up on these birds, and it's just a fun time. So, I mean, by far, whitetail is like what I enjoy, but turkey hunting the past few years has just been fun. Now, I say that, and I didn't get one this past year, but I mean, we hunted them hard, but it's just a weird season, I think, with the weather up here where we're at. It's just a lot of people didn't get it. It was a weird year, hot and cold. We went from like 90 degrees one day to like 40 the next. So it's just
I feel like turkey are so unpredictable, and it could be that I didn't grow up hunting them. I mean, I grew up like whitetail hunting first, and then I jumped into waterfowl hunting, more small game hunting. But it really wasn't until I moved down to Missouri during college that I started turkey hunting. And so part of it could be that I just don't know. But it seems like they're hard to predict sometimes. Like, you might see them every single day in a certain spot, and then they just disappear for whatever reason. Or on some mornings, like, we would sit in the same spot in a field here on some property that I have access to, and we'd hear them gobble across the street, like up on this bluff along a river bottom. And we'd hear probably a dozen toms sounding off all along this ridge line.
Yep.
And then I told all my buddies, I'm like, listen, they do the same thing every day. They sound off. It's not until about 9:30 they cross the road into the cornfield behind us. Sometimes they come all the way over and hop into the bean field that we're in. And I take one guy out there. I'm like, dude, it's like guaranteed you're going to hear gobbles all morning. We got out there, didn't hear a single gobble, like not one. And I'm like, I've been hunting every day of the season, and I haven't gone without hearing them. And then they just shut up out of nowhere. So
that's kind of how our spring was. It was weird because it was just, we had them on camera on our cell cameras every day, and we had them pretty much patterned, and we knew where they were setting up. And like, unfortunately, they were setting up in this little ridge, like right where we couldn't hunt. So we're on my friend's land, but like we could see them like a few hundred yards out, but we had them patterned, we thought, pretty well. And then all of a sudden turkey season comes and they just disappeared. It was crazy. Just a weird year, but hopefully we'll see what this fall brings.
I got some guys out. I was actually on a different podcast, and made friends with these guys. I was like, hey, why don't you guys come out and hunt with me one morning? And they were public land hunters. They go out, they do a run and gun, kind of like you do. They'll go out, listen for them to gobble, try to get as close as they can without busting them in the roost, and then call them in. And I was like, why don't you guys come check out my place? You can come sit in the blind. We'll see what we can call in. And they did. And as we're like, not wrapping up the hunt, but it was mid-morning, one of their girlfriends messages them, and she was like, hey, you need to come home. There's a tornado that just touched down like a couple miles from our house. And they get on the weather app, and they're looking at it. And this tornado touched down right where they always hunt, like the same ridge line that they always hunt. And they're like, dude, if you hadn't invited us out today, we would have been in the middle of a tornado while we're turkey hunting this morning.
That's crazy.
They were like, man, you got to come out. So next year I'm going to go out there and try that same run and gun type of deal that you're talking about, work public land, see if I can find them or hear them before daylight, and then get close enough to bring them in out of the roost.
Definitely worth checking out. It's just a different type of excitement almost. It's hard to explain until you really experience it. But I think that adrenaline, just kind of running and hearing them, it's something magical about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just everything outdoors. I tell people, I've had multiple people ask me, like, what is it that you love? Or like, why do you feel like you're drawn to hunting? And I tell them all, I'm like, it's one of the most like primitive things we've ever done. Or it goes back farther than just about anything else that humans have done, like aside from reproducing, like we've always hunted for food. And I'm like,
Yes.
so I feel like everybody kind of has it in them, but it might just be a different level that they, that pursuit and that excitement and passion for it. But I've never taken anybody out and had them be like, yeah, this is dumb. I don't like this at all. They've always been like, wow, this is actually really cool. They may stick with it, they may not, but it's very rare that someone absolutely hates it.
No, we don't have that experience at all. Even like some of my friends and stuff, or girls that we get them out, they love it. It's just peaceful. It's different. I mean, it's hiking. You see things you don't see every day, and it's just it's a fun time, just getting that fresh air and just kind of unwinding.
Yeah. Let's chat a little bit about your skull dipping company, because you started doing this. You shared with me the story of how you got into it, but can you share that with the listeners?
Absolutely. So I'm not always into the trophy hunting, but I mean, we take a lot of deer and things for ourselves too, just to eat. But definitely we look at the big, deer that we see each year that we kind of want to hit on our hit list. And, the past few years we've been very successful here in Pennsylvania, and like they did this new like antler restriction and things like that. So the deer are becoming a lot bigger here that we haven't seen in the past 10, 15 years. So it's becoming this hot spot. Absolutely. Game Commission definitely got this one right. But I started getting a lot of mounts and a lot of shoulder mounts, and my wall started filling up, which is not a bad problem to have. But it started to become very costly. And I have friends that do taxidermy, and like down the road from me, a good friend of mine's probably by far, he's well renowned in the state and then here internationally. He gets things from Africa even in quite frequently for mounts. And he's very good. But it started to become pricey. And I mean, I respect everything that the taxidermists do, because it takes a lot of work to do what they're doing. And it's a technique, and it's an art. It's really an art to get in what they do. But I started looking at other avenues, and I've had some European mounts done with the traditional whitened, and that's something that I like and enjoy. And I saw recently here a few years ago, people started doing hydro dipping. So really taking these different camo patterns and things like that and putting them onto that traditional, whitened skull. And it's a different look, and I really liked it. So I looked into it more here locally, and then I just started messing around with it. So I'm like, I have some dead heads. We go out shed hunting, things like that. And I'm like, I have some deer that we've shot, my dad shot over the past few years that weren't anything like mount worthy. So I would start messing around with those and just kind of see. And I kind of got onto like different YouTube and all these different like websites and talking to different people out of state that I talked to. And it just kind of really took off. So I started doing different hydro dipping for myself and a few of my hunting buddies. And we started messing around with different camos and the mossy oak and true timbers. And they came out great, and they look unique.
Yeah.
But then it just kind of started to blow up from there here the past few years. So it started to turn into like a few of my friends and hunting buddies would get into it. But then they started showing people at work, and it just kind of grew from there. So I didn't really, I'm a teacher by nature and by art, but I've always had a passion for the outdoors, and it just kind of something here the past few years that really took off for me. So, and it's something I enjoy doing. So it really grew. I got everything wound up here for the business, and it's doing very well here.
That's cool.
Locally in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I checked out your social media platforms, and the stuff that you're putting out is amazing. I mean, it just looks so clean. Like I was telling you, I get into like, I'll see a video of someone hydro dipping on their own. They'll take like 10 different rattle cans, and they're spraying all these colors and mixing them in just into like a Rubbermaid tote full of water.
Yes.
And then they dunk the skull. And I'm like, man, this is crazy. But seeing the stuff that you do, it's actual images a lot of times. Like it's the actual camo pattern or American flags or flames or whatever that is. I mean, you do actual imagery, which is crazy.
It is. And it's like you can see a specific camo or something you might wear, like, whatever that might be, mossy oak, true timber, kudu. There's pretty much anything that you can imagine these days is something that we can get and dip. And what I can do is literally take that same image that you might have on your jacket or your camo, and I can put it right onto that skull, and it looks identical, which is nice.
That's so cool.
And it's, it's kind of brought it into different aspects and stuff too. This past year, my one friend shot pretty nice deer on Halloween. And he's like, I want this in blaze orange. And I'm like, Man, I've never done a blaze orange deer, but like, I'll give it a shot, and I'll tell you what, it came out awesome.
That's cool.
Something that I wouldn't think that I would enjoy, but it turned into something I did for him in archery season there. And a lot of people this past year has kind of turned on to this blaze orange, which you wouldn't really think is something popular, but it just looks unique for some reason, and it just kind of stands out. So, but yeah, like you said, it's I've watched the rattle can things too, and like I even when I got started out in that Tupperware containers and stuff too, and messing around with heating it. It's a pain, but like I have a professional setup now, obviously, by doing so many of them. But I can take really anything that you have in mind and really hydro dip it and put it on to anything that you want. And like I do skulls, that's my main focus, but I also I've had some turkey skulls come in this past year. I've had a lot of bear skulls come in. So really kind of whatever you have in mind that you can really run with. And here locally, we're an agricultural kind of area, so it's kind of odd to say, but the past 2 or 3 months, I can't tell you how many steer heads have come in where people wanted me to do specific mounts on them. So they're bringing in their steer, and I'm putting patriotic things on it, or camo, or really whatever they want. It's I had a guy bring me in one here recently. He wanted it in this like teal blue color, and I'm like, I always tell the people, I will go out on a limb and I'll try anything that you want me to, but I can't guarantee what this is going to look like when it's done. So, and I'm doing a lot of custom work too, which is kind of unique because I'm messing around with different images and I'm, airbrushing things that you just wouldn't normally see. And he wanted this Harry Potter theme. So I took this blue that he wanted, and it was, I mixed a camo into it how he wanted, but he got this emblem from Harry Potter. And I'm not a big fan of Harry Potter. I kind of know about it, maybe seen a movie here or there. Yeah. But I smacked on top of this skull, this Harry Potter theme, and it came out phenomenal. I showed like my kids at work, and they're like, "This is amazing." And I'm like, "I guess like this is what you're into, but it's not something traditional I would be into." But really, the possibilities are endless, which is what's nice about this. It's just pretty much anything that you can imagine. I'll try and I'll run with. So it's unique.
Man, that's so cool. So obviously the Harry Potter thing's probably up there with the like stranger things that you've done. What's the weirdest object that you've hydro dipped?
Oh, what's the weirdest object? So I do a lot of, like I said, skulls and things are my main piece. I've really gotten into firearms lately, which is very popular too. But just different types of skulls. I've had different African mounts come in. I had a guy, he goes up and hunts in Alaska, and he got a bear, and I'm telling you, it's a Kodiak. And I mean, it was just massive. I mean, it's something like proportional size that you wouldn't ever imagine, but you can really hydro dip about anything, which is what's crazy. I mean, I can't tell you off the top of my head something you really can't dip. But like bone cases, I just dipped Crocs for somebody here like 2 weeks ago. They're like, I want Muddy Girl Crocs. I'm like, all right, I'll do it for you. So we did, but I mean, as far as like apparel, things of that nature, I have a friend who does dragsters. So I did for him, his like, exhaust pipe and the intake manifold for him in this like money scene. Cause he does these high end races, and he's like, I want $100 bills on this. So I'd say that's probably one of the more unique things here recently. That's just different, but it possibilities are endless. I mean, there's so much stuff out there that exists in this imagery and like, the creative part of it, that it's unreal. It's stuff that I don't even see. And all these companies now, they're getting in the game. So they're licensing their product out to these other companies that, you can get them. Mossy Oak is like pretty much licensed to one specific company, but anything now is like I have access to it, which is nice because its possibilities are endless. I mean, it's crazy. But like cryptic is kind of one of those things that's been coming on here recently, not so much in my area, but with the fishing scene and like Huck, there's possibilities are endless. It's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy. And whatever people like want, I go for. Now, you say like American flags, there's 30 different types of American flag patterns out there, or different things that I can do with them. I mean, it's nice because it's creative, it's unique, it's something different every day. And it really takes from that traditional mount or object that person has and personalizes it for them.
Man, I like you mentioned Huck, and I didn't even think about fishing gear. Like, dipping fishing gear. That would be so cool to have like a custom dipped fishing pole, like your rod, your reel, all of that. It'd be sweet to have it like, because my bow, my bow is camo, and I've got orange strings, I've got orange arrows, like I've got the whole like contrast deal. But with my fishing stuff, it's like it's just whatever I bought at the store. But to like start customizing everything, I mean, it sounds like you really can.
You can, and I've done some like Yeti coolers and Arctic coolers for people and stuff too. But recently, we have like a fishing derby here locally, and I donated to them. I did a lot of different fishing gear, which was just kind of unique and kind of getting things out there. But I dipped like these cryptic patterns and stuff, even for like their tackle boxes and stuff. So I mean, it takes it to a whole new level of customization that exists that you wouldn't think about here in the past few years, and even like gun manufacturers and things like that. There's a few of them now that are starting to get into more camo and options, and you've seen some Muddy Girl and things like that. But a lot of the manufacturers don't have those options. It's kind of, you get the wood stock or the traditional synthetic. But what's nice is I can take kind of whatever they have in mind and just run with it, and you just go with it and make it unique to themselves.
That's cool. So like when you do a skull, do they bring in like the deer head, and then like you actually do all the cleaning and everything? You take the skin off of it, or do people just bring you in the skull already kind of in a European mount stage?
So I'd say 98% of it is people bring in their whole head to me. So they'll shoot the deer. They'll either take it to the processor and they'll, just kind of hack the head off for me and bring it to me, and I'll prep it for them that way. But there are a few that have like traditional mounts or something that's sitting around from years ago or something their dad shot or something. But it's 99% of the thing is I prep it for them. So they bring it to me. Ideally, within a day or two after they shot it is ideal for me. And then I skin it out. I have beetles that do a majority of my work for me. So I have a few different tanks, and I have probably 50 to 100,000 beetles at this time. I don't know how too many. But I put them in, and then within a day or two, they pretty much clean them up pretty good. Take everything out. They'll eat all different parts of that skull out of it, and then I clean them up, and there's some base work and prep work you got to do, and you got to tape the antlers off and things of that nature. But I'll get them prepped up, and I'll see what the customer wants. I'll order the film in, and then within a few days I can have it back to them. Now again, with volume and stuff, sometimes it can be a few more weeks to a month and stuff, but I really pride myself on getting things back to the consumer quick. Like you see taxidermy up where I'm at, it can be a year, sometimes 2 years. It's very common. And like our deer season here for firearms is like right after Thanksgiving. And I had people that like, they had their kids shot this deer or something. They're like, can you have it to me by Christmas? I'm like, absolutely. And I did. So I can turn it around usually a lot quicker, depending on, you get volume in a few hundred things. You got to kind of sort them out and go from there. But it's nice too, because you get it back to them recently. It's not something you're like, oh, I shot that deer 2 seasons ago.
Well, we ran into that. I went on a moose hunt in Colorado with my buddy. He drew a tag, and it was October 1st, 2018 that he shot this moose. And we were all super pumped about it. Like, couldn't wait for it. I mean, we dropped it off at the taxidermist a couple days later, probably like the 4th or 5th, maybe. Because we were up in the mountains. We stayed out there and camped and like ate moose steaks out there. It was awesome. So we dropped off at the processor or the taxidermist, and it wasn't until a month ago, I was just out in Colorado. That's the first time that I've seen the full shoulder mount of this moose. I mean, It took over 2 years to get this moose completely done and back on his wall. And I mean, in the meantime, the taxidermist gave him the skull back, and so he had the skull hanging up on the wall. But it was like probably a year and a half before the taxidermist called and said like, hey, I need the skull. The hide's finally back. I'm going to start work on it. And so, I mean, yeah, that's almost 3 full seasons ago that he dropped it off, and he just got it back recently.
It's crazy. And again, I don't want to take anything from the taxidermist, but I have friends and stuff in the industry. And it takes a long time to get those specific things, especially how you want them to look. And some of these mounts they do now where like the deer and the turkeys are just like standing up free form and things. it's definitely an art, and I can understand why it takes so long. And with this pandemic, I kind of even ran into it a little bit about supplies and things just taking a little bit longer with the post office and things. So it's definitely understandable, but it's an art that not many people have.
I mean, anything I've got aside from this deer mount back here, everything I've got, I've done myself, and I'm terrible. I take care of the meat all the time. Like, that's my number one priority when I shoot something. And I love having skulls on the wall, European mounts, like furs, all of that stuff. But every now and then I'll just be so busy. And like, I currently have a deer head. I cut off a deer. It was 2 seasons ago that I cut off of it. And it's been in my buddy's freezer. I mean, we've got a big freezer just for this stuff. It's been in the freezer. So it's not like it smells really bad or anything because it's been frozen. But I'm like, man, I still need to get that done. Like, randomly we'll be like, oh, hey, let's all get together and boil skulls tonight. But I wish I had beetles, because that would be the way to go. I've seen the beetle work. Like, they just take all the hard work out of it. I hate power washing skulls after they've been boiling for hours. It's the worst.
And it's, with the boiling, I've tried that method before too. And like, sometimes you got to wash them and stuff a little bit different, but like traditionally with that, in my experience, at least, you start to lose even some of that size of the skull.
Yeah.
It just shrinks a little bit and stuff. And we've seen the power washing technique. I've tried that also. But you have to be so much more, I think, particular and careful with those kind of things. Like, you can't let it in too long. The power washer, you got to have like under 2000 PSI or something too. And how you do that, it's just,
and the skull starts to like expand when it heats up and contracts. And then you end up with the cracks in it, the gaps in it. It's
and those people, like, they just seem like where the cartilage is just kind of comes out. And I have a lot of people up here locally that try to do it on their own because they just kind of want to save some money. And by all means, I understand it. It's hard times and stuff too, but like, they'll get these nice deer and then they'll just ruin them. And it's just because they're trying them on their own, or they've seen something on YouTube. But it's, it doesn't always come out that way, but you can definitely boil them and get them off. But by far, these beetles that I have, best investment ever.
Yeah. So it sounds weird. Where do you buy beetles at? Is there like a website that you buy them and they ship them to you, or how does that work?
They do. And like, we have like maggots and beetles here. Like, I could go out if I wanted to like let my deer head just kind of rot, for better words, and let the maggots go over them, but it stinks and they're just not the most efficient. But I got my beetles out of Oregon and Washington, actually.
Okay.
There's people out there that kind of just raise them, I guess you would say, and that's kind of what they specialize in. So I'd order them and then they'd kind of next day air them to me. But the thing is with these beetles, it's crazy to say. They have a like 6 month, I want to say 7 month kind of lifespan, but they reproduce like crazy. So I started out with maybe like 20,000 beetles, and then every few months they just kind of regenerate. So they're constantly growing. And I'm thinking here probably by this fall, even, I don't know, maybe 100,000, 150,000. I don't know. I just keep taking them and put them in different like storage containers that I have, and they kind of reproduce, which is great.
Yeah. How does that work? Where do you store them? What do you keep them in? Are they in like Rubbermaid containers?
So it's, you would think bugs are just kind of one of those things you got to let them do their thing. But like, I have different freezers and storage tanks, like even like old, like big fish tank kind of things, but they're very particular, which is you wouldn't believe it, but like they have to be a certain temperature. So I keep them around like 80 degrees. The humidity has to be at a certain range for them to live in. And then like, it sounds funky, but I got to like give them water and stuff every day too. Like, you'd almost have your own pet. But other than that,
just
they're kind of
100,000 of them instead of like
right.
a dog.
Right. I have them like most of the times I try to get old freezers that don't work, and I'll put like heat bulbs. And again, I have temperature things in there and alarms. So I know, like, unfortunately, I lost like one of my beetle tanks this past year with them just because we lost power where I was at, and I was away on vacation. And I didn't know. And I come home and I'm like, oh man, like it was a hit. You know what I mean? And they're not cheap. Like they get a little pricey, but they like to be in that one kind of zone of where they want to be at. And, they reproduce in that area. Typically in the summer times, I try to drop the temp a little bit, and I don't want to say freeze them because it's not that, but like just kind of puts them more in a dormant stage a little bit, so they're not as hungry. But I'll get them, deer season and stuff. I like them to be ready to roll, so I can put a deer head in, and I mean I skin it and stuff. Especially I won't have to by any means, but when I start to get a lot of volume in, I like to get them in and out quick. So I'll skin them, but it's crazy. I'll put them in. And I'm telling you, within 24 hours, sometimes even 12 or 16 hours, it is completely like completely clean.
Jeez.
It's unreal. Like I tell people, and people see it because they're just fascinated by it. But like, if you ever seen like the mummy movies kind of things, and like how like those bugs and things just like overtake people, it's the same thing with deer skulls. Like I'll put one in, and no joke, like within 30 seconds, they are completely engulfed on this thing and just going to town.
Do you ever do like a time-lapse video of it?
I've thought about it. I probably will this year, put it out on some social media and stuff too, just because so many people are fascinated by it, because it's crazy. It's unreal.
I'd watch that for sure. That sounds awesome.
It's something I definitely need to explore with the social media. And it's people just, they're amazed by it. And even like hunting season comes around, I'll try to come out and put them like in a little bowl or something, just so people can see them when they drop their stuff off. But I will tell you, there is one downfall of these beetles, and it is a smell. And it's a smell that I can't even describe, but it's worse than death. It's worse than like something you'd smell like a roadkill on the side of the road. Because they're taking this,
already dead thing. Yeah.
Already dead thing that doesn't have the best smell to begin with, and cleaning it off. So I originally started them out within my garage, but I have like a shed and stuff kind of out away from my house because there's just a smell. And like, I'm used to it. It doesn't bother me because I use one of those things, but like, I'll have like my friends or something come over and they'll be like, what is that? That's like, and I'm like, oh, it's the beetles kind of thing. But other than that, they're great. I mean, they're pretty self-sustaining, water them, keep the temperature, things of that nature. Feed them. I do got to feed them throughout the summer and things too. I'm very fortunate now with people bringing me all these like steer heads and stuff now that I have plenty of meat for them to eat and stuff to go with. But in the past, I've had to like go to like a grocery store, or I'd have to go get like roadkill. So I'd see people like hit a fresh deer, and I'd be like, okay, then go chop off part of this and freeze it so I can feed them later in the year, kind of thing. But it's so pretty unique.
That's so cool. I would love to see like the operation and how it all works. So you've got them in these containers, but then inside of the containers, is it just dirt, or is it sawdust, or like wood chips? What do they live in inside of the containers?
I think you can use things like that. What I found out the best is just like paper shreddings. So I'll get them from work. We'll just shred office paper, and then I'll throw it down in there, and they love to live in it. So they kind of like, you don't even see a lot of them because you put a few inches of it down until you put something in there, and then they just kind of all come out of like crazy. But it's usually like a few inches of paper shreds is what I use. And then the other thing is styrofoam. So I'll get like my Amazon boxes in of styrofoam, and they'll go in and they'll burrow, and like that's where they'll like reproduce in these like styrofoam pieces. So it's weird, but that's typically what they live in for me. You can use some other things, but it just works the best. After a few months, I'll try to cycle some of that paper shreds out, but they really don't. It's not bad. Like as long as the head isn't like dripping off or something crazy, they kind of they're pretty self-sustaining.
They clean it up.
They clean it up, and they kind of clean themselves up too, if that makes sense, over a few months. So it's not like something I constantly got to be taken care of. And I will here shortly probably change them out and do some things, but it's pretty unique. It's its own fascination.
I know. I'm like, man, I could get into just that aspect of it. But then, I mean, doing the skull dipping and hydro dipping, all sorts of other things, that's all crazy. I mean, it sounds really cool.
It is. And it keeps me busy. And like, I started out with like a buddy of mine kind of getting into this. But depending on like what this year brings, and it's kind of been scaling well for me here the past few years. I totally foresee that I'm probably going to bring even some people on to help me out this year in the fall time, just because it gets busy. When deer season hits, it's crazy, and it's constantly moving, and it's, I have a few friends that'll come in and watch me dip sometimes, and they're just fascinated by this process of how things work. And it's an art. It's just it blows my mind sometimes. I was out dipping last night, some custom cups and stuff for some people and businesses, and it amazes me sometimes when you put things in and how they come back out, just how crisp and unique they are.
Yeah. How big are your dipping tanks? Like what's the scale of something that you could dip?
So I have a professional grade tank now. And again, those things can run crazy amounts of money. I mean, it's crazy, but it's the easiest way I tell people, think of like a big plastic bathtub or a hot tub kind of idea.
Okay.
And it has like a heater in it, and it has like a circulation pump in it, kind of like a hot tub that clears things off. And it kind of does its thing. But my tank I have now it's 6.5 feet long, and it's, I want to say about three, maybe a little more than 3 feet wide.
Okay.
So it can take some pretty good sized things.
Yeah.
I have everything I've dipped so far, I can get into it. So I've done like wheel rims for people. I mean, firearms, things of that nature. I've had one instance where I had an elk. A guy brought me an elk skull in, and actually it was a monster. And just because it was so long, I had a very hard time dipping it, just because the angle that you got to put it in at and things like that, like it was just crazy long. So, I mean, that was the only thing so far I brought it into that's kind of giving me a little issues. But other than that, it's a kind of big bathtub is what I like to say. And I keep that usually warm too and insulated. So it has like computer aspects and stuff to it where it's automated and timed and things like that. But you got to keep that usually in the 80s, 90 degree range too. So when you want to use it, but yeah, it's pretty fun.
Wow. I would get into trouble. I'd get myself in trouble if I had something like that, because I'd be like dipping everything. I'd be like, oh, kids, bring me your bike, take the tires off, dip the whole thing with the bike. I'd probably try to give myself like a sleeve tattoo or something,
Oh, you can. And like, I'm looking now, I got it pretty well cleaned off, but like my arms and stuff sometimes are just like camo, or it's because you get it. You mean, and I try to put like gloves and disposable things on, but like you get it. And like, if you don't get it off within a few hours, it becomes like a tattoo. And it was like, I had stuff up my forearms. I had to wear like long sleeves to work because I couldn't get it like scrubbed off. It was just on there so good until you got it off, after a few days. But yeah, it's funny. But
man,
yeah,
that could be a business in itself, like temporary tattoos. Like, come on in, you just dip your arm in the tank and we're good to go.
They have these like glow in the dark stuff now too. And like my one friend, they're like, even for like parties or weddings, like maybe you need to like bring some people over and just like dip their arms in something unique. And I'm like, I've never thought of that. But,
yeah.
Who knows? Possibilities, right?
People are going to be wondering what you're up to. Like, people are like taking their shirts off and like dunking in this weird tub. And
right. They're gonna, what is this guy going on? I'll probably getting like inspections from the state here the next few days when this goes live. But it's crazy. It's crazy.
Man, that's really cool. I'm gonna have to look more into it, because like I said, I've watched the DIY stuff, but I'm just fascinated now by the full process. Can you walk us through, like, once you get a skull in, the beetles clean it off, it's ready to dip, what's the process of actually dipping it, and how does that all work?
Yeah, so once it's cleaned up, I actually put like a small primer amount of paint onto the deer skull or the skulls that I'm working with. And this paint's like, it's just not something you could go get off the shelf at Walmart or Lowe's or Home Depot. It's a specific paint for hydro dipping, and it's really like this water soluble type. It's very tacky. So I use that, I set it up, and within 10, 15 minutes after I paint, I can dip it into a thing. So the dipping process, in the most like simplistic terms, is you pretty much get the thing prepped. I usually tape off the antlers and things that you need to specific areas, depending on what the object is. And then I take this film. So we order the film in from multiple different companies that I use and different patterns and things that they pick out. And it comes in usually like 0.5 meter or 1 meter kind of like width by a few meters long typically. And you can order as big as you want kind of thing. And you'll cut it down and you'll put it on the water. And you put it on and it looks like a piece of like a piece of plastic kind of thing you're putting on. It's very unique. If you've never seen it, I suggest you get on to like my social media or even some YouTube, because it's a unique process. But you put it on the water, you let it hydrate is what it kind of talks about. So you take like this plastic piece And it's like, think of like a 3M kind of plastic, and it like hydrates, where it just kind of all the water gets sucked into it, and it just kind of turns it over, and you let it go for different amounts of time, usually like minute, 2 minute kind of idea. Then you put this activator on it, and you spray this activator on it, and it takes this thing that's laying on the water that looks like plastic, and it turns it into glass. And it's like this mesmerizing process instantly, that you go from, you know, having this piece of plastic that just looks like a piece of weird paint on a sheet of plastic, to glass, like a stained glass kind of thing.
Okay.
And you wait a few seconds, and then you dip it down. And again, there's different angles and, you know, different processes you got to go with it. You dip it real slow, typically, bring it down, clear the top off, and then bring it back out. And whatever you just put it on, it's going to be on that image for the most part. It's crazy how good these things turn out when you know what you're doing. Man. And then, you know, I let them dry. I gotta rinse them and things like that too. But I usually put a clear coat on top of them also, so it protects them. Different people want different things. So I have like a matte that I use, and then I have like a high gloss, which is pretty nice too. So I do that for a lot of people that I dip, and even put it kind of on the antlers and things. So if it's in a room and like the light hits it, kind of like glimmers off of it nice. But it's pretty nice. Yeah, it's
awesome.
Definitely.
Now my brain is just working like, what? I've got frog gigging coming up. I don't know if you guys frog gig up in Pennsylvania, but down here we go frog gigging. And I mean, we'll catch bullfrogs that are that long, nose to toes. And you cut the legs off, you skin them, you fry them up just like fried chicken. It actually tastes really good. I thought people were pulling a prank on me the first time I did this. They're like, no, I mean, they were digging in before I thought they were going to be like, hey, Dan, try it. And, you know, laugh at me. No, they dug in. And so I started eating it also. But I'm like, man, frog gigging's coming up. It would be so cool to send in my frog gig, which is basically a big trident, and have that dipped with like my logo all over it, and show up to like opening night of frog gigging, like, guys, check this thing out.
Absolutely. And the possibilities are endless for these things. It's just anything that you can think of. And people amaze me when they call me. They're like, have you done this before? I'm like, no, but you know, we'll give it a shot. I mean, it's just possibilities are endless. Endless, really.
How long has it been? I mean, like, when did you start this? And then obviously you've got professional grade equipment. It sounds like you've got the whole process down. You've got your own beetles. How long did that all take to accumulate?
So the past few years, I've just been kind of messing around, doing it on my own. You know, we started out with like different water tanks and dipping them like under like stock tanks almost and things like that. Okay. You know, not really anything too specific, but they were coming out pretty good. But the past 2 years is when I really upgraded into the professional grade and really started to put my name out there. And it just kind of really went from there. Like I said, it went from just some friends and, you know, people that I hunt with to then their colleagues. And then it just blew up overnight. They're saying, wow, look at these different things this guy's doing. And it's just a different, you know, aspect of mounting and preserving your hunt, you know, that's not like a traditional way. And we're doing some different things too with different mounts that I'm working on and different like things around the house. So we're working on some concepts now. It's like even like an end table. So I put end table and then we put like glass around it, and then we put some like LED lights into it, and like I'll put like a rock and some scene in there, and then have like this European kind of skull on it, kind of looking like it's naturally there.
Yeah.
Or we have a fence post that we're kind of working with too, kind of concept. So we're hanging off like a fence post. So it's just taking like what you could simplistically, what you normally hang on the wall or sit on your desk, to even now putting them into these like more landscaping kind of scenes or mounts that you can put in your room. And it takes up a lot less space. It's obviously a lot more frugal in the, you know, cost aspect. I mean, you can get this done for very reasonable compared to where you'd have a traditional mount. I mean, compare like nothing. It doesn't cost much at all to get kind of things like this going.
Yeah, I mean, going from like trying to have fur preserved, I think that's like the big cost in most taxidermy, you know, because as soon as you take away the fur, it gets pretty reasonable. I mean, I know guys around here that, well, I say I know, before I moved out to Colorado and then back, they were talking about doing like European mounts for like $100 each. But if I just wanted coyote hide. Like I would shoot a night. I shot a really cool blonde coyote. I mean, it was almost like golden retriever color. And I shot that and I called around and I'm like, hey, how much would this be to have the mount done? And they were like, it's going to be around $950 to have the full mount done. And I was like, for a coyote? I was like, okay, forget that. What about just the fur? If I send the coyote in, get the fur tanned, and they're like, yeah, it's still going to be around $450. And I'm like, okay, scratch this. I mean, I just threw it out in the field, you know, like I'm not about to spend that kind of money on a predator. If it was a bobcat, like a big male bobcat or something, maybe, but I'm like, I shoot coyotes all the time. I don't need something like that. But I say all that because I really do think the fur preservation is a huge part of the cost and a lot of that stuff. And so once you eliminate that and you can go to the skulls and you can make them decorative, make them look awesome, like it's just a cool way to preserve a memory.
Absolutely. And the nice thing is too, like, I don't want to say you can mess up, but you can kind of mess up, like even like a traditional mount. You got to skin it out a certain way and have so much, of the skin and the hide there for when you get it mounted to take the taxidermist. But like with this, I had a guy this past year accidentally shoot this monster like in the face, and he brought it into me and he's like, here's the bull. And he's like, can you do something with this? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I'll try it, but we'll see. And I got it off and I did some work on the skull itself and patched it up where you wouldn't know. And he shot this thing with like a 300 Win Mag right in smack in the center of the thing, but it preserved it. And I got it back to where it needed to be. And, a unique way there that you wouldn't.
Yeah, that's cool.
So
that's really cool. I was thinking about that same type of deal because we've got pigs here. The property we live on, the guy we rent from, he raises pigs and he's got one right now. It's a boar and it's probably in the 650 pound range. I mean, it's got big old tusks and it's a breeder pig. I mean, it's like a big puppy. But I was thinking like once that one's, dead, it'd be cool to have his skull, because I'm telling you, from like the back of his head to the tip of his nose is probably this long.
Wow.
I mean, it's got to be at least 2 feet long. It's huge. But I was like, man, that'd be a really cool thing to have dipped and like hanging on the wall, or like just a cool way to remember.
I've done a few this past year for people. Some of them were like wild boar and stuff they get out of state. But a few of them were from like farmers too, because they're just like that's what they do. And they're like, this is something I want for my shop or, for my garage. And they come out nice. I'll like whiten the teeth up too, or the tusks. So like you'll have this nice camo mount or whatever. And then like you'll have that nice white piece and it comes out crisp. It's just, it's nice. It's definitely nice.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm going to have to look more into all this, because we've got plenty of places that we've got taxidermy hanging up, things that we've done or deadheads we've found. And we do a shop night every Thursday night. Me and all my buddies, we get together and hang out. And I'm like, man, it'd be cool just to have like a big skull or an antler or something with shop night on it, like hydro dipped. And you've got my brain racing. I'm going to be talking about it. My wife is going to get annoyed by me. I'm going to be talking about hydro dipping for a while now.
You get on YouTube or even TikTok or something, the hours will go by quickly. I can tell you that.
Oh yeah. I already have a problem with that. I get lost in TikTok and YouTube and Instagram world. I start scrolling and, I've got to like snap out of a trance by the end of it.
It just goes quick. I'll sit down sometimes here at night and I'll get on something and it's like 2 hours later and it's like, what just happened with my life? Kind of thing. But there's just you see this social media thing, and it's definitely an area that I'm trying to push out more here, just because that's where a lot of it is anymore. I mean, there's so many things out there that you see on social media and kind of get it out there. But yeah, it's definitely fun.
Yeah. I've got one more question for you. So when you dip these things, is it almost like a hardened shell that it puts on the outside of it? Or like, is it pretty scratch resistant?
It is pretty scratch resistant and preserved. Like I said, I do put like a clear coat on top of it just to cover it a little bit more for that things. There's 2 that I use. The one is just like a normal kind of clear coat. And I actually have one that's like a hardener. So I can take different things. If you want to like go out and throw it in your driveway, I can put it on top of it and you can try smashing it and it's not going to break, and it kind of preserves it. So it is, for the most part, I mean, it's going to stay there and it's going to be fine. I do put like a clear on it because you can just kind of wipe it off with like a wet cloth, like with dust or anything too. So, but it holds it up pretty good as long as you don't hit it with like specific chemicals or things of that nature, which most people won't even have around their house. I mean, you're fine. It's going to be fine. It's pretty well scratch resistant and it holds up. I mean, some of the stuff I've even done here the past few years, it wasn't maybe my best work, I would say, when I got started. It's still holding up fine. I had a kid drop one here a few months ago in my shop, and I'm like, oh, I don't even want to look.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it was fine. It was so.
That's
I mean,
awesome.
they hold up pretty well. I mean, definitely better than a traditional mount. They hold well.
That's
And
cool.
the firearms too. Like I mean, what's nice about that is I put this hardener on that too. So I'll put a camo pattern on, and like these pinks and purples and like these, Tiffany blues and stuff. Like you wouldn't imagine. Like I do a lot of camo and things too, but I can't tell you how much of the firearms are like kind of geared towards the women and these younger girls hunting, which is great because I mean that's an area we need to explore. But I do so much of those kind of things, and then I'll clear coat them. And what's nice is like I have some guns from like my grandfather and things too. Like I go out hunting with like an .06, like a nice pump gun that I like to go out and hunt with. But I can take these guns that I have now, you go get off the rack anywhere, and preserve them, put camo and stuff on, and I coat them so hard that like you can literally go through like a big piece of brush, and you're going to come out having a few hundred things tacked into you, but that gun is not going to have a scratch on it at all, which is just kind of a nice piece to it too,
So when you do kind of like that hard shell on the outside of it, or that clear coat, is it also a dipped clear coat, or are you doing like a spray on clear coat?
It's a spray on is what I use. I mean, they do have a dipped clear coat, but I haven't had good luck with it. But it's more of a spray on. I use like a HLPV gun kind of gun, and it goes over it. And like I said, it does wonders for what it is.
That's awesome. Well, hey, we're coming up on an hour here. I'm going to give you a chance in the last segment. I call it emptying the chamber. If there's anything you want to share with the listeners, any piece of advice, a joke, it doesn't have to be anything specific, but if there's anything you want to share, now's your chance.
Yeah, I think for advice, especially in this industry, if you shoot one of those, preservable things, or even one of your first deer or things like that, like take it to a guy like me professionally, get it done. It's something you don't want to regret in a few years. A lot of people try to cut the corners and try to do things on their own, and it becomes messed up or not quite how they want. But it's pretty cheap for what I do and what I charge. So take the time, get it to them, let them handle it. And I mean, the biggest thing I tell people is if you can't get it to me in, next few days, just throw it in a freezer. Yeah, I can take your work from a few years even and, preserve it into that lasting memory. And I think, the tip for me is just get out and enjoy the outdoors. I mean, there's so much to experience that people have in their backyards these days. Just get out and enjoy it. I mean, it's never going to be a time that you're going to have a bad time or not enjoy. So just get out and enjoy the outdoors.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Josh, I really appreciate you hopping on with me. All of your stuff was fascinating. I mean, like, I didn't think I was ever going to geek out over beetles, but now I'm like, I want 20,000 pets. That sounds great.
Right.
So one last thing, if anybody wants to follow you, what are your social media handles, YouTube channel, whatever you've got that people can follow along?
Yeah, so TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all those things. It's all at Droptine Custom Skull Dipping. And then my website's also droptinecustomskulldipping.com. And they can find me there. If they hit me on Google or any of the social media there, go out, give me a like, shoot me a message, and be happy to sit down and chat with you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'll make sure to put all of the links to that stuff in the bio for this episode when it airs. So again, thank you so much. It was definitely a pleasure chatting with you. And we'll have to hop on here again once you're in busy season. I'll pull you away and see how it's all going.
Hey, I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Just ended the recordings. Man, that is some fascinating stuff. And
I never would have thought we would have went in that direction, but it did. And it was good.
Oh, yeah.
It just felt good. Yeah.
It did. It felt really good. Man, I just like, I didn't know how it would go. My wife posted without me even knowing, like, that video where it's like, hey, if you're interested in hunting or fishing or the outdoors, like, reach out to be on the podcast. And I was like, man, is this going to be weird? Like, I'm about to just talk with strangers and I'm not going to, like, we don't know each other. I'm going to hop on and then have an hour-long conversation with some random person. And it's been awesome. I've absolutely loved it. I mean, and it flows even better than when I sit down and do podcasts with friends or family. Like,
it's like unscripted, and it's just, kind of just goes. And I think, people that have those specific passions and things that they love doing, and it's natural. I can sit down and talk about hunting or fishing or hydro dipping with people for hours, it seems, and just, it's fun.
Yeah, it was definitely a good chat. With this episode, I've got, I think, like 6 lined up right now to air, and I'm doing 2 a week. So this one will probably air at the beginning of July, if I had to guess. Awesome. So I'm going to go through and edit it, but I'll send you an email the day that it actually airs. And then I'll do like a post on social media, whether I'll do probably a post on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, just saying like, hey, I had Dr. Josh Farr on with me from Custom Skull Dipping, or Droptine Custom Skull Dipping. And so then, it'll get out that way. So absolutely. I'll send you the links to where you can listen to, and then you can feel free to share or tag me. Like, I'll tag you in all those posts so you can share it on yours.
No, we'll share it. I'll get it on my, definitely social media and website and stuff too. I was listening to your episode last night out on a walk, and I saw it came up. It's like live on TikTok. I'm like, oh, let's give this a look too.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, definitely get it shared out for you.
Yeah, I did live today. So I got this new board that I can like mix everything on. I can have up to 4 microphones on, still have like a Zoom call that goes through the computer onto the board. So you can hear me through my microphone. I can hear you through my headphones. But I tried to do a TikTok live with it, and it didn't even register to me. Like, they can't hear my guest because I'm hearing my guest, it's not like an external speaker. And so right before this, I had my wife hop on with me on TikTok live and try to figure it out. And so I think I'll have to look at the comments and stuff, but I think everybody was able to hear the full conversation on TikTok live today. So
awesome.
We'll see how that goes. But dude, thanks again. I really do appreciate it, and good luck. It sounds like your business is kind of booming, and hopefully it continues to take off for you.
Yep. I appreciate it.
All right. We'll see you later.
Yep. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.